Clay, back from a wonderful weekend of Trump and NCAA wrestling, flying on Trump Force One, no less, Air Force One. He will break down all of the biggest takeaways from this and all of that. Clay, I assume you had a fantastic time.
I did. And just to be clear, I imagine that I have set a record that probably may not have been ever in existence. I landed in New York City and Philadelphia and then returned to Washington, D.C. with President Trump. Um, and I landed like midnight. We did on Saturday, turning into Sunday. Checked into the hotel, woke up early, headed straight to the airport, and hopped on a Southwest Airlines flight. How many people do you think have gone Air Force One to Southwest Airlines? I would say that is probably the extreme. You cannot go in different, more extreme for aviation. So that was my arrive in D.C. on Air Force One, leave Air Force One on Southwest Airlines. And anyway, we've got a lot to talk about. We got some good clips from President Trump. He wanted to tell all of you he'll be on with us soon, and that he is proud of the success this show is having, and that he misses Rush. So he wanted me to tell all of you that, and that he is thankful. And I talked to you about it, Buck. I mean, maybe my biggest takeaway is just how comfortable he looks. He just has done this before. And I think anytime you have a brand new job, whether it's president of the United States or president of a company or heck, just a manager for the first time, you don't really know what you don't know. And he knows exactly how to do this job. And he just seems very, very comfortable in it. And I think you can see that through the first 60 days, how well things have gone.
Clay asked Trump, that's why we're thinking about Trump right now, about the incident where Tim Walz is saying he thinks he could kick people's asses or whatever. And this is how he responded. This is cut 6.
You saw Tim Walz. I know you talked about Tim Walz saying he could beat up Trump supporters. Did you see Caitlyn Jenner said that she thought she would be able to take him? Who would you take in a battle, Caitlyn Jenner or Tim Walz?
Caitlyn all day long, but I also have, Kane.
Yeah.
How about Kane?
Oh, Glenn is an awesome guy. He challenged him. I put up 10 grand for that too. And the challenge is, I don't think Tim Walz has responded
By
yet.
the way, that wouldn't last a second. He's like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
He's the biggest human being.
He's an awesome guy.
He's a great guy too. He's a mayor of a town and he's all MAGA.
That's Glenn Jacobs, mayor of Knoxville. I think we've had him on the show before, former WWE wrestler. And by the way, that was on Air Force One, so inevitably there's going to be audio. We'll play a couple of the cuts, and audio guy or gal is going to be like, why isn't the audio better? Well, it's not a formal studio. It's literally sitting on Air Force One.
Sound like you. I mean, the difference in the vocal is really pronounced. Was that with your iPhone?
It was with an iPhone.
That's okay.
They wanted to have, and I'm going to write about it at Outkick. They wanted written articles. They didn't want to necessarily look. This is part of the new media initiative, and so Buck, you're going to be up at some point. We're going to be up. They're trying to do a good job, and I think this is important of reaching out to new audience as opposed to consistently giving the Associated Press access or giving access to frankly, media outlets that don't actually produce very substantial audiences anymore. They saw in the election that reaching out to new audiences was actually far more effective, frankly, than sitting down sometimes with CBS or NBC or ABC, who you know is going to be unfair. I asked him about Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post because Jeff Bezos was at the inauguration. The Washington Post, when he got elected the first time, writes democracy dies in darkness at the top of the newspaper. But then they announced that they're not going to be endorsing. It seems to me clear that Bezos has finally gotten fed up with the coverage from the Washington Post. And I asked Trump about it. And here is what he said, cut 9.
Jeff Bezos was at your inauguration. It seems like he's trying to make the Washington Post more fair.
I think it's great.
Has he talked to you about the fact that he thinks, because they let Biden get away with everything when he was in office, they started to push him. They came after you like crazy.
At length, I talked to him about it. He's a good guy. I didn't really know him in the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a difference between now and the first.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg and Bezos and Jensen, who's fantastic.
I know you helped Outkick had a story, a couple of interviews that we did that were being edited that they worked out and they figured out on Facebook through Zuckerberg. What has Bezos told you about trying to be more fair in his coverage?
Just that.
Yeah.
He's really trying to be more fair. But they actually did a couple of bad articles at him. He said, "This is crazy.
Yeah.
I lose my fortune." What this thing, and they, you know, they're out of control. These people crazy. They're crazy people. They're out of control. And he's actually a very good guy. I got to know him this second time. He was up. If you look at the inauguration and look at the people that were on the stage, there was a who's who of a world that was totally against me the first time. It's a much different presidency. I have much more support.
Okay, I think that is really kind of important here, Buck. Crazy people. Jeff Bezos has told Trump that the Washington Post is being run by crazy people. This is according to Trump. And I think it has to be true if you just look at the actions that Jeff Bezos has undertaken to suddenly try and corral the crazy town of the Washington Post. And I think it's reflective. At the end, he talked about the cultural change. It's seismically different, right? We're not even seeing the Democrats or the legacy media able to really line up and do anything to stop Trump. And in fact, some of the people that were the biggest roadblocks, like the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos, are now kind of getting on board the Trump train.
Well, where were they going to go after what they had been promising their side, their audience for years? I mean, what do you say at this point? You have to remember, we would pop in and out. We would read the occasional. I know you're a New York Times subscriber. I was a New York Times subscriber. I'm trying to get away from it. But we're not as steeped in all of the editorials and all of the coverage that those papers were doing of Trump the whole time, because we have other things we have to read. And also, at some point, there's only so much propaganda that you can stomach. But imagine that you have been fed this steady diet of Trump is going to get crushed in these trials. Trump is going to end up, sentenced for these criminal wrongdoings. Trump maybe is going to be financially ruined. That was another thing they thought they would accomplish in New York with that absurd Letitia James, corporate fraud trial, and all of that came to nothing. In fact, it elevated, I think, Trump to make sure that he was going to win the presidency dramatically.
Cut 14 here. He talked about prevailing, to what you're saying, against the lawfare against him, but he said that his initial read when the raid at Mar-a-Lago happened was that it was going to be really bad for his presidential campaign. And then he decided, well, I've got to just roll with it. Listen to cut 14 here.
When they attacked Mar-a-Lago, they attacked Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
They invaded it. I said, oh, boy, this is brutal for my election.
You thought initially it was going to be bad for you?
I thought so. And the one thing I did is I talked to the press. I had news conferences.
Yep.
Whenever anything like that happened. These were crooked people. 100% crooked. When they did something like that, or the indictment, but not one indictment, it's 4 or 5 of them,
right.
Okay? And that led to 80 or 90, or because everyone had, it was a totally rigged deal. I would go out that night and I'd have a news conference. I'd talk to the people, and the people realized it was a scam.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a scam. Look what happened. And they're all out. Now here I sit in Air Force One with you talking. It's like one of those things.
It is kind of remarkable where we are. One more thing. I asked him, Buck, whether he thought Kamala should run for governor and if he had any advice he would give her. Here was Trump on Kamala's future, cut 2.
Kamala's talking about running for governor. Would you give her any advice as a politician? Do you think she should run? Do you think she's going to do it? What do you think her future is?
I'd let her run, but she's as far as, I don't want to be giving people advice politically, but one thing she's got to do, she's got to start doing interviews.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get away with both of them. But during the COVID things, he did no interviews, and he got away with it because of COVID, because, you're able to do things that you couldn't do. It was a great election, this last one. And I think it's much more historic the way it happened than if I had gone and typically.
Don't you think in some way it's better because you have the Senate and the House now in 24, you're able to be more effective than you would have been in 20 probably?
It's better because it shows how bad they were.
Yeah.
They were so bad, and it shows that. And when you see, you're comparing it to the worst president in the history of our country, and I think in that way it's better. What they were doing didn't work, and if I would have done it more traditionally, we wouldn't have known that.
Okay, so those cuts you can listen up on Clay and Buck, but I do think the biggest takeaway is he is just reveling in it, Buck. In a way, to your point, he beat his enemies. I got to tell you, when we walked out at the NCAA wrestling championships, which I don't remember anybody ever really talking about that much. I mean, he brought the attention with him. The entire place, standing ovation, chanting USA. Now happened at the Super Bowl. It's now happened at the Daytona 500. It's now happened at the wrestling championships. Men who are overwhelmingly sports fans, I know a lot of you are women sports fans as well, but men are behind Trump at a level that I haven't seen in a very, very long time.